On April 23, 2025, after 20 years on Texas death row, Moises Sandoval Mendoza was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit for the 2004 abduction, sexual assault, and murder of 20-year-old Richelle O'Neal Tollison. On a March night in 2004, Richelle Tollison, just 20 years old, was at home in North Texas caring for her 6-month-old daughter. She was a young mother, living quietly in a small community with no indication that danger was circling just outside her door. Moises Mendoza, a 20-year-old local man with a growing history of aggression, broke into her home sometime during the late evening or early morning hours. He bypassed the child's room and targeted Richelle directly. Authorities later noted that nothing appeared stolen. There was no forced entry, only presence, intent, and execution. Mendoza abducted Richelle from the home, leaving her infant behind, alone and crying. From there, he transported her to an unknown location. What followed was a pattern of methodical violence. According to his confession, he strangled her repeatedly, watching her lose consciousness, then wake, then be choked again. This prolonged assault was punctuated by a sexual attack. When she failed to die from strangulation, he stabbed her in the throat, delivering the fatal wound. He abandoned her body in an isolated area and fled. But the story didn't end there. Several days later, Mendoza returned to the crime scene. He doused Richelle's body in fuel and set her on fire, attempting to destroy evidence. Then he moved her charred remains to a creek bed, further concealing the location. Her body was eventually discovered on March 23, 2004, partially burned and decomposing in the water. The brutality of the crime shocked the community, not only for its violence, but for its precision. Mendoza would later confess in detail, but when asked why, he had no answer. Mendoza confessed to the murder just one day after Richelle's body was found. He told a friend what he had done, and that friend contacted the police. Investigators quickly obtained a full custodial confession. The physical evidence aligned. Injuries on Tollison's body matched Mendoza's description of the killing. The infant left behind in the home further narrowed the timeline. Forensic evidence tied Mendoza to the crime scene, and investigators matched footprints and tire tracks near where the body had been burned. In 2005, a Collin County jury convicted Mendoza of capital murder. Prosecutors argued that the crime occurred during a burglary, kidnapping, and aggravated sexual assault, which under Texas law qualified it for the death penalty. During the punishment phase, the state presented evidence of Mendoza's prior violent behavior, including assaults against his mother and sister. A jail officer also testified that Mendoza had initiated a fight while awaiting trial. This was used to argue that he posed a continuing threat to society, a requirement for capital sentencing in Texas. Years later, Mendoza's attorneys challenged the credibility of the jail officer's testimony, alleging it was false and unchallenged by his original counsel. They also claimed ineffective assistance during both trial and early appeals. These arguments were ultimately rejected. The Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles denied clemency. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to intervene. But had the outcome been sealed not just by the crime, but by a defense that never fought hard enough? Mendoza's final meal was not publicly disclosed. He declined to make any unusual requests, and no media account provided a record of what he ate. He remained composed in his final hours. There were no signs of panic, no refusal to walk, no need for restraint beyond protocol. Witnesses noted that Mendoza appeared at peace, though detached. He declined to issue any legal challenges on the day of execution. He accepted the state's timeline without resistance and did not request to see a spiritual advisor. His actions suggested resignation, not agitation. At approximately 6 p.m. on April 23, 2025, he was led into the execution chamber at the Huntsville unit. Mendoza showed no resistance as he was secured to the gurney. Witnesses described him as quiet and emotionally stable, neither defiant nor visibly distressed. When asked for final words, Mendoza addressed the family of Richelle Tollison directly. "I am sorry for having robbed you of Richelle's life. I'm sorry for that. I know nothing that I could ever say or do would ever make up for that. I want you to know that I am sincere. I apologize." Turning to his sister, wife, and 2 friends seated behind the glass, he spoke in Spanish. "I love you. I am with you. I am well and at peace. You know that I'm well, and everything is love. At 6:32 p.m., the drugs began flowing. Standard Texas protocol, pentobarbital administered in a single lethal dose. His breathing slowed within seconds. He was pronounced dead at 6:40 p.m. There were no spasms, no final struggle, just silence and a controlled end. His final words projected remorse, but whether it was redemptive or rehearsed remains unanswered.